Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Lee Colan, who's a co-founder of the L Group, a leadership advisory firm. Lee, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mike. Great to be here.
Hey, it's really great to talk to people that are thought leaders, and I just am excited to talk about you and your projects you've got going on. Catch us up since the last time we talked. I think we spoke back in maybe pushing 2 years ago, so it's great to have you back on the show and what's been happening since then and what's new in your world, and kind of let's dive into all things leadership.
Great. Well, I appreciate that. We last spoke when we were rolling out our last book. I think it was our 15th book. It was called The Power of Positive Coaching, that combined kind of the latest in the research on positive psychology and kind of just the human dynamic to provide a really simple model on how to kind of develop winning results and relationships with your team. So it really just covered a little bit about how to create a positive coaching mindset and then employ positive coaching habits. And we always say you got to get your mind right before you get your team right. That applies to anybody, in the corporate world, the entrepreneurial world. So we talked about that. So thank you so much for having us on then. And really over the past year, we've my co-founder and my wife, who's also my wife, over the past 21 years, we've just had this business going that we serve leaders, but then we decided, what do we want our lives to look like for the next 10 years, and how do we want to use our gifts to best serve people, and how do we understand what's going on in the market? So back before the pandemic, we started this iterative process of understanding what's going on in the market and the shifting needs of the worker. And we've seen there's lots of Gallup research that says people are, more purpose-driven now. They're more developmentally oriented. Back in the day, we used to talk about work-life balance, Mike, and then it became work-life integration, and now it's just life, right?
Yeah.
So, and the pandemic suddenly, as all crises do, they accelerate existing trends. So we just looked at those and just looked at what does that mean for today's leader? What do they have to do? And then how does that match with our God-given gifts and how we want to employ them and help people out in the market? So we've just recently rolled out kind of a new approach toward healthy growth. So we're really all about kind of how do we help leaders inspire healthy growth. And so we do a lot of work around developing healthy leadership, because we say, leadership's an inside job. It all starts with the leader. But healthy growth it starts with the leader, but it's not about the leader. It's about your team. And then we have kind of 5 elements that kind of help develop healthy growth, which start with, your purpose, your culture, engaging people's hearts and minds, positive coaching, which we spoke about last time, and then ultimately excellent execution, because all that stuff's great, but unless you execute on it, nothing happens. So whether you're a small business or a larger business, we've seen this kind of model be proven out over the years, and it's really just based on the understanding human dynamics, understanding how our brains work, how people's needs come to the workplace. And if a leader can look beyond the employee and see the human, he can see those needs and then try to drive some healthy growth that way. So anyway, that's kind of what we've been up to, and so we just finished rolling that out.
Sounds like
a lot. So we're excited about that because it jives nicely with some significant Gallup research around what the trends are for employees these days. It jives with what's happening in the marketplace now with post-pandemic, kind of trying to find that balance between working at home and working in the office, and jives also with our just kind of pretty deep understanding about how leaders can be effective. So we're having fun with it, and hopefully we're making a difference in some folks' lives.
Let's jump into growth from the perspective of post-pandemic, but I'm going to put an asterisk right there and say, yes, we're coming out of and recently coming out of post-pandemic, but no matter when you listen to this interview, there's going to be something going on. I remember I'm working on a project right now where I am developing some messaging around a new campaign, and I remembered and I pulled up this interview where I was spotlighted. This was like 10 to 12 years ago, and this was right before the crash of 2007, 8, 9, the financial markets. And so my point is, you can say pandemic, you can say financial crisis, you can say you could say
fill
9/11.
in the blank, right? Yeah.
Something we will be, we're either at the peak of valley, we're either at the valley getting through it, or we're at the peak going, whew, that was crazy. But something is always, you're never going to be, going, yay, life is great. So with that thought in mind, how do companies from entrepreneurial mindsets now almost not rebuild, but have the opportunity of going, you know what, when we were doing things pre-pandemic, there were some things that we might have wanted to change, but we never really did. Now, when we're moving forward, we can go, hey guys, we're in this fresh new direction. Let's go. We've got our breath of fresh air. Let's do this. Let's retain some of the things that we had to do during the pandemic. Like as an example, we got to go virtual. We got to be flexible. We've got to. What are some of the things you're seeing that can be retained in a positive way while we're getting back to moving forward? And then what are some of those mindsets that you're seeing your clients formulating?
Yeah, and necessity is the mother of invention, right? So we saw so many of our clients do things they were struggling with for years and knock them out in a week. So we got to get it done. So now with some reflection, we could say, okay, what's working for us and what's not. And we believe in really being discerning around that. Just like when people say, oh, we need a culture change. Well, it doesn't mean you change your whole culture. Like what's working for you, what's not. And it's the same thing here. So a lot of what we're seeing is, in terms of what's working for them, is a lot of the virtual communication. So they're like, okay, we don't always have to travel to a client site. We could take advantage of that. But there's also this balance of saying, hey, we also need to kind of collaborate and connect, right? So it's easy to say, oh, everyone could get their work done off-site, remotely, and that's great. And we always caution our clients to say that running an effective enterprise, small or large, is more than just individuals getting work done, right? We could all sit at home and get work done. So you want to make sure that there's this balance of, do we have space and time dedicated to collaborate, to connect, to innovate? And so I think that's important to find that, and then still offer people flexibility, which, by the way, the Gallup research I alluded to points to the fact that flexibility is like the number one priority, the greatest value of employees now. So by the same token, we also have to run an enterprise. So we kind of find that balance. So I think the virtual communication will stay, but I think we want to make sure we just don't do it for everything, because I think we start disintegrating our culture and our ability to connect, collaborate, and innovate when we just do completely virtual. And so I think that's one thing. And then I think the nimbleness and just almost the mindset of going, you know what, we always have to be questioning things. Like, let's not wait for the next crisis to, have that breakthrough. One of our clients was trying to create a website. They're a B2B company. They were trying to go B2C, and they were developing their B2C website for 3 years. And then they knocked it out in a week during the pandemic, right? So it's like, let's have that same level of urgency. That as many of our clients who work, and listen, every company is cyclical, right? It has its ups and downs. What's the old saying? This too shall pass, right? That's meant to make us be hopeful when we're in the valley and humble when we're at the peak. So we know, like you said, no trend goes on forever. So we want to make sure that, but a lot of our clients will tell us, man, when we're in the valley, we're at our best. Man, we're shoulder to shoulder. We're coming up with new ideas. We're lean. We're doing things fast. And then we get back up in the peak again, and we kind of get, a little comfy. So I think it's a lot of our clients are really trying to figure out, how do we keep that mindset about, again, being nimble, being quick, and not locking into what we're thinking about. So it's really, all the research around Carol Dweck's research around growth and fixed mindsets, right? So just having that growth mindset of going, okay, we could change. I might be a 55-year-old, entrepreneur, but I could change, right? I could be thinking different ways and stuff. So we believe that your mindset, I would say the game of life and business is a game of inches, the 6 inches between your ears. So I just think that whole mindset of being flexible and nimble and being willing to question things and have open conversations is really critical. So that's one thing. And one last thing is just one thing I think that's going to stay is the humanness. I talked about just before quickly that we used to be kind of work-life balance was the goal, then work-life integration. Now it's just life. So as a leader, small or large company, if people don't know that you love them, you care for them as a person first, that's not going to be very sticky for them, particularly today's generation. They want to connect with someone. Just because you're the boss doesn't mean we can't have a relationship, that's deeper than just a work relationship. They want to know that you know about their kids and their family and all that. So I think just that more personal level of connection at the workplace, even though you might be virtual, is something that's probably going to stay around for a while.
100%. And I'm looking at your graphic for healthy leadership, healthy growth. Yeah. And I'm going to point out one observation and then dive in deep on a couple points here. But one observation is there's 5 sections. And here's one thing that I really like that you did. In a bigger size, you put the generic buzzwords, purpose and plan, culture, hearts and minds, coaching, execution. And if that's all you put in that area, it's like, no. But then you clarified it by saying a compelling purpose and plan, aligned culture, and engaged hearts and minds. Because if you just say culture or have culture, it could be one culture for the R&D department and another culture for operations and yet another for sales. So they have to be aligned. So I think that I really like what you did there. Secondly, when you made a comment a second ago about, kind of now, we had time to kind of pause and get some things going. And it's now like the rubber band almost where, okay, go. Well, you need to have now that compelling purpose and plan so that everything is aligned in the culture so that the execution is excellent. Because one problem I feel like could happen is you get this whole rebound effect and you're running around in 10 directions and the execution lacks. And now you're right back in the muck and muddle that you were before. And it's like, man, I thought we made some strides with, polishing things up. So I think that if you could take that, pause and make sure you're heading in that right direction. So talk a little bit about that mindset.
Well, you're right on with that, Mike, because the first element in our, we call it our adherence equation, your ability to execute, is focus. So if you're completely opportunistic, particularly for entrepreneurs, we see that a lot. They think kind of like structure is a 4-letter word, right? It's like, we don't want structure. Let me kind of be opportunistic. And there are ways to have a plan and some focus and still enable yourself to be opportunistic. But focus is the biggest challenge, particularly for entrepreneurs. So I think that's really critical coming out of this. But as I mentioned before, today's worker is really key about being purposeful. So in other words, there are 2 levels of purpose. One is, I want purpose in my job. Like, I want to feel like I'm making a difference in my work, but I also want to know I'm working for an organization that's making a difference. They're purposeful. They're making the world a better place. So in terms of current and future recruiting, the new worker, that's really key for them. So as a leader or a founder of your organization, you want to make sure that you're clearly articulating what you're doing to hopefully make the world a better place, make the lives of your customers easier, better. But then also at the job level, making sure that you're telling people how they're making a difference, even if they're in accounts payable, right? Okay, so what are you doing? How do we help build a bridge between, a daily potentially rote task and some brighter tomorrow that the business is trying to create? So I think that's really important, that starting point of having that compelling purpose and plan. And you could say that's been important forever, but we just know the data tells us that today's worker really hones in on that. So to attract those kind of people and retain them, you want to make sure you're clear about that. And then if you can get clear on that, that by default starts honing your focus, right? Which automatically starts helping you being able to execute better. So you know what you're going to say yes to, and just as importantly, you know the kind of things you need to say no to. And because people don't want to feel like they're kind of like on the back of a ship just being thrown one direction and another as the entrepreneur or the owner of the company is chasing a new idea, right? We want to make sure that they're being a little bit filtered and they've got some day-to-day focus.
And that comes with that aligned culture. That comes with articulating that compelling purpose and plan. And then when you sprinkle in that positive coaching with engaged hearts and minds, I mean, I just think that, this whole wheel here, image is so telling, because everything that you're putting out from this new research and new direction, it just ties it in so nicely here. And it is not a check the box and here's all we need to do and then now let's move on to the next thing. This is something that probably the senior owners, entrepreneurs, senior management in an organization should be looking at this literally probably quarterly and going, okay, how are we doing on this area right here?
Right. And we would even say daily. I mean, just because it starts with your leadership. If you see in that circle, around all those 5 elements, Mike, is healthy leadership, right? Yeah. So your leadership, how clear you are on your purpose, how clear are you on your personal values, how engaged are you? You're setting that example that's going to it's going to set the limit on how well your team is going to do in that. So we always say the outcome here is healthy growth, and healthy growth is positive, it's strong, it's sustained, and it serves all parties. That's great. But the single most important factor influencing that healthy growth for your business is you and your leadership. And that's why we have that outer ring. So it really, you set the upper limit.
100%. Well, let's talk a little bit about your new assessment that you have. Talk a little bit about the Healthy Growth Checkup.
Yeah, and it's easy. It's a freebie. It's on our site. It just kind of helps people figure out where in that journey toward healthy growth they might start. And we always say, listen, we just meet you where you are. It doesn't matter. There's no judgment about it. But it's a quickie, 2-minute self-assessment just to kind of give you a feel. And it covers those 5 elements you mentioned, and in addition to healthy leadership. And again, your leadership is a force multiplier. So you'll notice in the assessment that your score on healthy leadership is going to have kind of this multiplier effect. All the other elements, the 5 other growth factors, they just kind of get added together, plus, 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 plus. But your healthy leadership has a multiplier sign, a multiplication sign right after it that shows you that, okay, my leadership is gonna be the force multiplier here. So again, it's a quickie. There's no obligation. No one, it's just to kind of help you figure out. Okay, let me just use this as maybe a roadmap for how I'm trying to build some sustained healthy growth here, and figure out kind of a few areas. And we have lots of tools and stuff. Again, free stuff, and we're also happy to help you too. But to kind of just help you kind of get started on that journey.
Lee, thank you so much for coming on today. It was great reconnecting with you. I love your clarity in the direction that you're bringing your thought leadership. So thank you so much. And I will have the link right in the show notes for your website so people can pick up that assessment. But you can go to thelgroup.com and also look for that assessment. Lee, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Mike. Have a great day.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.